Hello everybody. Let's do a walkthrough of solutions to the quiz problems. There were two different quiz forms, so the one that I'm going to do may not be identical to the one that you did, but let's kind of take a look and see what there is to see. So it says, which of the following correctly describes what this code fragment will do? All right, so what I'm seeing here is we're asking the user to type a number, and that gets saved as a string, and then we convert that into an actual int called n. So n is going to be whatever they typed. Now I'm looping 10 times, so what's inside the curly braces gets repeated 10 times, and that's adding something to my list. So right away I know that my list is going to have 10 numbers in it because I have one add command that's being repeated 10 times. And the actual numbers that are in my list, it looks like I'm always adding the same number. I'm adding the number n. So I think it's going to be a list with 10 numbers containing whatever the user typed. And here it says if the user typed 3. So I think it's going to be a list of 10 number 3s. So let's see here. With 10 number 3s. Great. So I think this is the answer. Okay. So which correctly describes what this code fragment will do. So here I'm still repeating 10 times. Except now asking the user what number they're going to type is inside the loop. So it's like I'm going to ask them what number, and then I'm going to add that number to my list, and then I'm going to repeat it, or I'll ask them again. And then whatever they type this time, I'll add to the list. So I think that probably the best description here is it will ask the user 10 times to type a number and add each number they type to the list. All right, so now we've got similar code. So they're typing a number. Whatever they type gets saved inside of n. But this time, the number of times I'm repeating this loop is n times. So if they type 3, this list.add statement is only going to repeat 3 times because the number of times it repeats is here, and that number is n, and n is 3. So here I'm adding the number 10 to the list. But because I'm adding it 3 times, I think I'm going to get a list with 3 numbers, all of which is number 10. So 3 number 10s. Looks like it. All right, which of the following for loops will loop 0 times? So for this one you actually have to think carefully, step by step, what exactly each loop is doing. So here, if I set I equal to 10, and then I say, is it true that I is smaller than 10? The answer is no. So this one's going to exit right away because this condition, which is like an if statement for repeating the body of the loop, is false at the very beginning. So I know this one's going to repeat 0 times. Let's see what else we got. So here I'm starting at 0. Is it true that I is less than 10? Yes. So then I'll repeat the body and I'll add 1. So I think this one's going to keep adding 1 until I eventually gets to 10 and then stops. So this one is a normal loop. Here we've got I starting at 10. It is definitely larger than 0. So we do the loop and then we subtract. So I think this one's going to subtract down to 0 and then stop. So that seems okay. Here I'm starting at 1. It's true that 1 is less than 10, so it will definitely do the loop, and it will keep adding 1 until eventually we get to 10. So this seems okay also. Here I'm starting at 0. Then it says, is it true that I is bigger than 10? And the answer is no, because right now it equals 0. So I think this one's also going to exit immediately because this condition in the middle is false right away. All right, so I think those two are the answer. Write a for loop which will display the numbers 10 to 22, including 22, skipping by 2s. Okay, so let's do int I equals 10 is where I'm going to start. I want I to be less than or equal to 22 because it says I want to go all the way up to 22, including 22. So that's why I want to have it equal 22 for its last loop. And then I equals I plus 2 is going to make it skip by 2s. And so now in order to display it, I'll say system.out.println, just I, and that's it. A couple people had weird things with array lists in here. The question doesn't say anything about array lists. It just says display, which is a print statement. Okay, so I've got 2 array lists, A and B. Here's what's inside A. Here's what's inside B. So what's going to happen when each line runs? All right, so C equals 2. Let's remember that. So now it's saying a.get0. So 0 is the location that I'm trying to get. Remember that the first thing in the list is location 0, and then location 1, and then location 2. So if I'm asking the A list for location 0, I think that should be 16, because that's location 0 on the A list. Here I'm asking the B list for location C, but remember C is equal to 2. So really I'm asking the B list for location 2. So that's going to be 0, 1, 2. So I think that's 3, because that's the location 2 in the B list. Here I'm asking the A list for location C plus 1, and that's all inside the parentheses. So C is number 2. If I add 1 to that, that gives me 3. So really I'm saying a.get 3. So if this is 0, then this will be 1, 2, 3. So I think the answer is 0 here. For this next one, the plus 1 is outside the parentheses. So first, I'm going to ask the A list to get location C, and C is still equal to 2. So first, I'm going to get location 2 out of the A list, and then once I've gotten that, I add 1 to the result, because the plus 1 is on the outside of the get command. So let's get location 2 from list A. Here's 0, 1, 2. So location 2 in list A is 1, and then I'll add 1 to that. So that gives me 2. Okay, B.get 5. So let's see, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so that's off the end of the list, so that's an error. A.size. So that's like how many things are on the list. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it looks like there's 6 things in the list. And here I'm asking the A list to get whatever this is. So let's think about this. We just said that A.size equals 6. So if this is really 6 and I subtract 1, that's 5. So I'm asking the A list to get location 5. Let's look at that. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is 25. Hopefully you remember, or if you watched my review video, I think I outlined this specifically. Like the list.size minus 1 is the normal way to refer to the last location in a list. So when you see a pattern like this, it's a very, very common pattern. You should think, aha, I'm getting the last location in the list because it's the number of things in the list minus 1. All right, so far so good. Write a for loop which will display I win 300 times. So I equals 0, I less than 300. This is sort of the normal way to loop 300 times. There's other answers that also work, and I'll show them to you in a second. So I win. Okay, so we could go from 0 to 300. That works. I saw a number of people go from 1 to 301. That works. I saw a number of people go from 1 up to 300, but with an equals sign. That also works. Here are some things that don't work. This doesn't work. Starting at 1, going up to 300, not including 300. This only loops 299 times. What else doesn't work? So if I go from 0 to 301, that doesn't work. If I go from 0 and I say I is less than or equal to 300, this actually loops 301 times. That's too many, so that doesn't work. So if you know you want to loop a fixed number of times, I think probably the best thing to do is the conventional thing, which is start at 0, make sure I is smaller than the number you're trying to get to. And that's kind of the standard way of looping a fixed number of times. Of course, I accepted any of the other ones that also work. I'm just saying, like, that's the standard way that people do it. Okay, so here I'm going to try and output this data table. This is kind of identical to one of the homework problems. Except the numbers are different. So I'm going to look at the print statement. So it looks like I'm printing I as the first number. So what that means is that the first number in each row is I. So here it looks like I is going 2, 4, 6, and so on, up to 22. So I'm going to start I at 2. I'm going to make sure I goes all the way up to 22. I saw some people say equal 22 here, or you could say I is less than 23. Either one of those work. And then it's already skipping by 2's here. All right, great. So now it's up to me to decide what I want to do for the second number and the third number. So I'm going to define a variable, and it doesn't matter what you call them. I'm going to call this like middle. And I got to figure out, like, how can I calculate what the middle number is based on I? So it says right here, the second number in each row is 4 more than the first number. And I see that 2 plus 4 is 6, 4 plus 4 is 8. So if I is the first number, the middle must be I plus 4. So let's make this be called last. And it says the last number is half of the first number. So if the first number is I, then it must be I divided by 2. And so now I'm going to print middle as my middle number and last as my last number. A couple of people just ignored this stuff in the middle entirely and just put your numbers straight in here like this. And that's okay. I counted that as correct. But I just want you to be aware that you are always able to define your own variables here if you want to. I didn't, you could have named these variables whatever you wanted. Oh, I guess I can't undo. Well, anyway, you could have named these variables whatever you wanted, and that's fine also. All right. Fill in the blanks so that this code will add the letters C, D, and then the letters A and B in an alternating pattern 300 times. Okay, I'm not sure what that means, so let's look. So in other words, oh good. So when the code is done, the list should look like this. It should have C and D at the very beginning, and then A, B, 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 A, B. And the total size of the list should be 602 things. So let's think how that makes sense. I guess if I'm adding A and B 300 times in an alternating pattern, that's like I'm adding 2 things 300 times, so that should be 600 total A, B's. And then this is the extra 2 that gets me up to 602. Okay, so I think I know what's happening. So I've got a list called the list. So because I want C and D to be by themselves at the very beginning, I think I'll say the list.add C and the list.add D, like that. And now I want a loop that's going to let me add A and B 300 times. So I think I want a loop 300 times. So I'll say int I equals 0, I less than 300, I plus plus. And now I'm going to try and figure out what do I want to add. So I guess I want to add A first, and then I'm going to add B second. And I think that's going to do it. A couple of people put these ones inside the loop. And the problem with this is you are adding 4 things 300 times. So this is actually going to end up with 1,200 things in the list, because you're going to have C, D, A, B, C, D, A, B, C, D, A, B, C, D, A, B. And that sequence of 4 repeated over and over again. So that's why you don't want those inside the loop. We can have them at the very, oops. All right, well, we can have them at the very beginning of the loop. This thing is kind of irritating. All right, here we go. Okay, you don't have to be so picky about your indentation, but I'm picky. Okay, all right, so I think that's that one. Let's keep going. Okay, so here I'm looping. All right, so which of the following could not be the contents of list after the code is finished running? Okay, so let's look at this code. It looks like it's repeating 4 times, and I'm generating a random number and then adding that same number twice in a row to my list before I do it all over again. So think how long the list should be. All right, it looks like it's repeating 4 times, and I'm adding 2 numbers for every single repetition. So I think the list should be 8 long. So let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So that's okay. That's the same length. So this one's too short. This one's too long. This one's too long. This one's too long. So it seems like none of those could be it because they're the wrong length. So these are the only ones that are length 8. Okay, so if random number is 3, what would happen next? So what happens next is I add 3, and then I add 3 again. So I think like whatever the random number is, I should see that number twice in a row in the list. So here I've got 88442233. So that works because I'm seeing every single number twice. This doesn't work. It's the right length, but if I added 1, that must mean that the first random number was 1, and I added it here, but then I don't see me adding that same 1 a second time. So this one couldn't work. Oh, sorry. So this one could work, so I'm going to leave it unchecked. So this one couldn't work. Could this one work? 2, 2, 2, 2, 3, 3. Yeah, so this one could work also. Like what would explain it would be if I generated the random number 2, which I then add twice. And then in the next iteration, I randomly get 2 again. And so then I'd have 2 more. So that's maybe less likely than some of the other ones, but not a lot less likely. Well, I guess sort of technically speaking, all of the ones that could work are equally likely. But like what I imagine what you're thinking is the chances of randomly generating a 2 and then another 2 are smaller than the chances of generating 2 and then something else. And that statement is correct. But I didn't say what's probable. I said which of the following could not possibly be the content. And this one definitely could be the content. So I think these two are the only ones that could possibly work. That was a tricky one. That's why it was only worth 1 point. It's because I think this was the hardest one on the quiz. Okay, write a for loop which uses J option pane or scanner to ask the user to type a number. Whatever number they type, display a countdown from that number down to 1, and then display blast off. Okay, so string. So you could use your notes for this or your old programs, and you've got a lot of programs we've been doing recently that have this kind of thing. So J option pane, show input dialog, type a number. And then int n equals integer.parseInt b. Okay, that makes sense. And now I want to display a countdown starting from their number. So I'm going to say int I equals n, because that's their number. And then I want to count down, so I'm going to say I minus minus at the very end. And then I want to keep going as long as I is larger than 0. Or you could also say I larger than or equal to 1. Either of those is the same. And so here's where I'm going to display my numbers. So I'm going to do system.out.print I, so that way I'm going to start off at the number n and count down until I get to 1. So this is going to display like the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And then outside the loop, I'm going to print blast off, because I only want blast off to display once. So if I put it inside the curly braces, it would get repeated every single time. But here I just want it to display at the end after I've done the countdown. All right. Type a line of Java which will do each of the following. You may use your notes or old programs. Create an array list to hold strings. Okay, so array list string yo-ho equals new array list string. Okay. Add the word hi to the list. Yoho.add hi in quotes. Add the word yo to the list. Yoho.add yo. Remove the word hi from the list using the remove command. So as far as you know, we've only really talked about one version of the remove command, which is where you remove a location. So because hi is in location 0, because it's the first thing we added, I want to remove location 0. And then let's add the word YOLO. So yoho.add YOLO. It's getting silly. And then use the size command to display the number of things. Okay, so system.out.println. I gave you credit even if you didn't say println, but you should read the problem carefully. So yoho.size, and then you do need opening and closing parentheses. And that's it. Done with the quiz. I hope that this walkthrough was helpful.